Everyone watches women's sports. Everyone
watches
Everyone.
women's sports.
Everyone watches women's sports.
3, 2, 1, yeah!
Everyone watches women's sports. The podcast.
Okay, we are back. It's episode 7 of Everyone Watches Women's Sports. I am joined by the wonderful M. Anderson, co-founder of Gal Pal Sports, also a sports photographer, and a product manager at Sports Reference. You just do a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. Took a long time to get focused on sports, so now it's everywhere.
That's so relatable. Tell us more about Gal Pal Sports.
So yeah, Gal Pal is a project, I guess, is maybe the broadest term I can use to describe it, that my wife and I started after coming back from the 2019 Women's World Cup in France and realizing how frustrated we were with the tone of the coverage and everything being a charity and inspirational and
Yeah, and be glad that we're covering this league
Yeah.
and these athletes you love so much.
Exactly. And we had been to men's tournaments before and stuff, and the women's one didn't have a beer sponsor. We didn't have, like, there was no alcohol, and I was like, you're France, it's kind of like half your culture is wine, champagne, like, what are we doing?
Yeah, that's odd.
It was really strange. And I'll leave like the French planning aside because I think we heard enough about that around the Olympics, but
Yeah.
I don't think it was specific to the World Cup, but there was definitely room to be to improve things and also for us to just have fun with it and find some community there.
Well, I can definitely speak to the fact that I feel like women's soccer has needed more coverage in general, and especially from people who are passionate about it. You know, we kind of see, especially, I mean, not just in women's soccer, but in lots of women's sports, we tend to see like, oh, okay, well, I covered this sport for men, so I might as well do it for the women's counterpart. And they don't really know anything. They don't know how to pronounce names. They don't know, there's sometimes slight differences in rules from men's to women's leagues and things like that. So, it just kind of becomes this like, oh God, no, please don't.
Yeah, we want folks who are focused on women's sports, right? Like we want
Yes.
folks who this is their end goal, not
And
a
this is what they're
stepping stone to
passionate
somewhere
about.
else.
It's like men's sports is great, but I'm here for the women.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for you and Leslie finding that gap in coverage and working to kind of to fill it a little bit. We all appreciate it. And I admittedly am more of a casual fan for women's soccer than I happen to be for women's basketball, just because of environment, obviously.
Sure.
But it's just one of those things that even for a casual fan, it's like, I need somebody reliable. I need somebody who knows what they're talking about and is talking about the players that I give a crap about.
Yeah. Or even, can have fun with it, right? Like, knows enough. Like, we are not intense basketball watchers, but we can still have fun with the game. We know enough. And it's really funny this year as so many folks came into the women's basketball space.
Right.
Folks started looking to me as like an expert in like friend groups and stuff. And I was like, no, this isn't.
You're like, I don't know anything.
I've only been here slightly longer than you. Please don't. I'm not. Okay, I'll do my best. Is what it became. But it was, the bar is low, but we need to at least clear that bar.
Yes, I totally agree. So speaking of clearing the bar, there's a lot going on in women's soccer right now. Like so much that it, like as a casual fan, I'm really trying to like keep up and ramp up. Like there's been so many changes and things going on recently that we'll obviously get to, that I'm like, how does this all tie together? And it all does tie together because that's how the soccer world is. So we've got expansion teams coming. We are in free agency currently for the NWSL. There's been one, two, at least three that I can remember. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting. Retirements announced. So in your opinion, what's on the horizon for women's soccer, and what can we expect to see from the current young stars that are coming up right now?
That's a great question. Chaos is on the horizon. It's always on the horizon for women's soccer. I think
Great one word answer.
we're just gonna start there. I don't think it ever stops, and I am confident the youth will carry that forward. Um,
Absolutely. Trinity Rodman meme.
oh, all day, all day. I love that kid. Uh, but we're at a really interesting place of like changing of the guard, like you mentioned. We've got some legends retiring, and then we've kind of had this gap for a while because we were holding out for some older players and
True.
avoiding the changing of the guard for a little bit. So now
Hmm.
we're kind of rushing to catch up a little bit. We've got a big backlog of talent,
Right.
and I think we're all going to be spending a lot of time learning about some new faces,
Hmm.
seeing some breakout seasons from folks whose trajectory is just a little different than the folks who, excelled when they were 19, which sounds
Yeah.
nice. But
Yeah.
some folks don't hit that mark until they're 22, 24.
Hmm.
And so I
Yeah.
think it's going to be really interesting to see some of those more mature players get opportunities, or folks who otherwise couldn't break into national team camps jump in. Um, and then I'm trying to think what else. Knowing from the youth, I think they know that there is more and more money coming in to the
Yeah.
league, into the sports, and they know their worth. And so I think they are primed to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. As they
Um,
should.
as they should. And I'm excited to kind of see them lead that charge. And then we also have the youth coming out of, the NIL programs, or the first
Hmm.
year of having access to money in that direction. And now we get to see how that starts impacting negotiations, or where folks want to go play. Does it grant folks opportunities to go play abroad a little earlier at different times in their career? We don't know.
And I think it's interesting that you kind of mentioned at the beginning that you don't really know a lot of about women's basketball, because as we saw with NIL in women's basketball, it exploded. You found those handful of stars, some of which are still in college, some of which just had their first season in the WNBA, and it all the NIL money has just made it explode, where some of the fan base is like, oh, they make more money off endorsements than they even do off their season paycheck, which is insane.
Which, yeah, it's like also they can still have endorsements once they're
Was
pros,
Yeah.
guys. Like,
Hmm.
and then they also get a paycheck. So like
Yeah.
we're missing a factor in that.
And
But
that's the great thing about NIL is that it's buildable, right? Like, you don't
yes.
just get those NIL deals in college and then once you move to the pros, you're like, okay, well, that's done, new thing. It's you keep, like, you get the State Farm endorsement, you get the Adidas endorsement, or Cheez-Its, or whoever, that can make something of you. And then you got, like you said, that right on top of your season paycheck, and now you just doubled your money, essentially.
And hopefully we see that go towards like additional player development, or like
Yes.
them being the adjustment from college to being a pro a little
Hmm.
less crazy.
Smooth. Yeah, more smooth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not like kids going broke. I don't know if it's been as much of an issue as it was back in the day with like the men's football and basketball players, where it was like, oh yeah, I just bought my mom a house, I bought me a house, bought a car with my first paycheck, and now I have
And the
no
women,
money.
on the other hand, don't even know where their next meal is coming from.
Nope. No, they don't. And they're like, we're still flying, just southwest to try to get to a game between just what a time.
You're like, don't even get me started. But while I'm started,
Hmm. Exactly. Oh, I could go all day.
is there any in particular young stars, or like you said, a few of the more mature stars who haven't quite gotten that opportunity to break out yet, that you personally have been watching, or that you think people should kind of keep an eye on?
I'm far from the first one to say this, but I'm curious to see what happens for Ella Stevens,
Hmm.
out of Gotham. She used to be in Chicago, which is where like we learned about her mostly, and got to see her do well there. But then obviously last season she went to Gotham and had a breakout season of a lot of folks being like, "Oh, I see you, bud." So I'm hoping that rise continues for her.
Yeah.
She's very nice and like, always rooting for folks who left. But also, I'm kind of just excited to learn about new folks
Right.
that are off my radar even.
Right.
Especially in like goalkeepers. I'm hoping Fallon gets her spot on the national team and can anchor that down. A 6-foot keeper would be very fun
I
for us
know.
to
Since
have.
Nair had to go ahead and open the spot, we got to fill it.
Ooh.
Great.
Yeah, I'm still not quite ready for
A
that
little
one.
salty, obviously.
It's, I'm happy for her. I
And I
think
feel like
it was
so many,
coming.
I mean, even me as a casual fan, like, you knew it was coming, sort of thing. I mean, it's kind of how it all was before with Rapinoe and Ertz and everybody that had just recently went through all of that in the last 2 seasons. It was like, okay,
You can
any
start seeing the
minute
clock
now.
ticking on some of these folks. Like, I mean, Becky,
Mhm.
and you go,
Yeah.
okay, is it now? Please don't be now.
No, not yet.
Um, I'm
No,
not
if
ready.
it's not now,
But
it's got to be sometime.
exactly. We're lucky we get, I think, Alyssa a bit longer in Chicago, at least one more year. So that's
Mhm.
very nice. I'm relieved
Yeah.
that we don't have to just lose her entirely, but she gave us a nice like exit ramp there.
Yeah.
But I hope we see more of that too, of players leaving us wanting more or retiring from a national team before they retire from being a pro.
Right.
Um I've always really respected that move of like, hey, I want to keep playing, but I can't do both these things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's too
It's a lot
much
of
for.
energy.
Yeah. And especially because at that age, many of them have established families, oftentimes children. So it's just one of those things that it's like, you obviously have to take something off the plate. And a lot of times when you're doing one thing in 2 different places, it's one of those things kind of has to be eliminated, unfortunately. But I mean, I feel for you especially because I am a Portland Thorns fan, obviously. So we had Sinclair and Becky with one fell swoop, and it was
Just
like I was
out.
just getting into this.
No,
Why?
and those are rare. I don't know if they make them like that anymore. So,
No, especially Sinclair.
oh, I
Like
mean,
Ledger, I've got goosebumps just talking about her, and I'm
she's
not even a diehard soccer fan.
no, she's the coolest though, and she's just one of those. I will say, I think as a fellow old too, the last few years, you've seen her running down the pitch, and I'm like, buddy, you look like it hurts. Uh, and so I'm hoping all of them get some like bubble baths, some time at a spa,
Yeah, some
like all of
Epsom
the
salt.
massages you've ever wanted, like soak, don't move for a while, read a
Yeah,
book if you're Becky, like curl up with a cat. It's,
yeah, get some
it,
cuddles.
yeah, like relax, really relax before you go
Yeah,
chase whatever's next, because
yeah.
none of them can sit still for long.
Well, unfortunately for them and for someone like me and other more diehard Portland fans, I guess Portland is in good hands. We've got Sophia. We just extended Bella Bixby. So there's good things on the horizon, I suppose, like you said.
I think it's gonna be a page turner of a year of like what's happening in Portland. We're all kind of curious. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
lost Kling too.
Yeah.
And Klingenberg's a big one who I've always respected for not for retiring from national team before going pro and has continued to have a career
Mm-hmm.
there. I still don't know if we're confident if she's retiring or just a free agent now. If she wants to come to Chicago, that would be cool. We could use one of those.
You're like, here's
Um,
my pitch.
yeah, Alyssa, please call your friends.
Yeah. Get them
That
on the.
was low key. I was like, uh, Alyssa, can you please call Becky and get her to come hang out with you in Chicago for 1 year, just 1 year, while we wait for Sam Staub to like fully heal, so we can, have a defense. Would
You're
be
like, things are possible. It could
it's
be
possible.
discussed.
Anything could happen. And if Alyssa Nair called me and said, "Hey, I need you to go to this place," I'm not going to say no to her.
No,
No,
especially not Nair.
no, no. I'm like, what do you
She'll
need?
come
I'm
get
there.
you.
Exactly. Like, I'm a little afraid of you, and I say that with love.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
Yes.
afraid but lovingly afraid.
Yes.
So, we've obviously kind of covered. There's a little bit of ebbs and flows, obviously from NWSL, U.S. Women's National Team. all of that. FIFA in the mix. There's so many hands in the pot, so to speak. And there's always progressiveness at the center of the conversation. Um, but there are unfortunately some moral setbacks, so to speak. So, in your opinion, who are some of the players right now? Obviously, in the past, we saw Megan Rapinoe, which you can't see it, but that's what jersey I'm wearing right
Nice.
now. But
Can't
you
go
know,
wrong.
she was a huge proponent of the progressiveness, the coverage, the equality, all of the pay gaps, all of this stuff. Who are the players that are championing that right now?
It's a great question. I don't know if we totally know. A
Yeah.
lot of those folks are the ones retiring that have
hmm
been leading that charge. We do still
hmm
have Nair, who I know was involved in the CBA conversations
hmm
and recently in like stadium talks in like local Illinois or Chicago government here. So
Right.
I know we've got some sound voices there still. And we also have
Yeah.
a lot of smart players. Like, I mean, folks that went to Harvard, folks
hmm
that, Stanford players. Like,
Yeah.
these
There's
are
a lot of Ivy
not,
leaguers in the league.
yeah. So I'm not so worried that it won't happen, but I
Right.
think this is the year, especially with there not being a World Cup
hmm
or an Olympics to prep for, that we're going to have to see folks kind of
Step
step
up.
into those roles. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Naomi Girma could be one. I don't know if she's in front of the camera person, honestly.
She
If
doesn't
she
seem to
wants
be
that
much,
spotlight. Mm-mm.
but who knows?
Which I
She might.
respect.
Yeah.
Sophia, though, I think could definitely be that person.
Agreed.
Trin is built to be that person. Um,
Especially after what we just saw from her on Call Her Daddy.
yep,
Woo!
that kid has the media presence that folks can only dream of. Like, she is
Yes.
so primed for that, but she also has a lot on her shoulders.
Yeah.
And so it is something that I don't want to be like, hey, this person should really do it, because they don't know their lives.
Right.
But I think she would be a great advocate for things. And I honestly, I've loved her and like Nair's relationship,
Yeah.
and her connection with some of the older players, that I think
Yes.
actually might make that transition a little bit easier, even though she is younger than, say, like the Harans and Lavelles
hmm
and Sonnets that you might expect to fill those gaps next.
Well, and I also think, in a way, some of those older players obviously look at Trent and they're like, hey, regardless of whether you want to or not, or whether you embrace it or not, you have a given platform just because of who you are and who you're related to. People are automatically paying attention to you because of that. And what if you were the one who could kind of say, hey, I'm going to take over this conversation. And this is what we need to keep doing? And I think Trin is one of those players that, if that was, the way that the vets were kind of saying, hey, like, you should do this, and kind of giving her that nudge, that she'd be like, okay, I'll do it. Tell me what to do.
Yeah. I think she might need some guidance, and
Yeah.
that's where like those older players being there as support to kind of help with that transition might help. But I think, yeah, she absolutely could lead that charge and do it really well.
Yeah,
So it'd be
definitely.
nice to see.
Is there anything from the recent CBA? I think that was just agreed upon in August. Is there anything from that CBA that stands out to you as a diehard fan?
I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the new CBA as I was. I know
hmm
I had talks about it with folks over the championship weekend, but that feels so long ago right now.
Yeah, it was a long time
Um,
now.
it does. And I think I've been on 7 planes since then. So
Right.
I don't know if there's anything massive, but I know Megan Berg has been involved, and she's one that is just such a great person to have on the player side,
hmm
that I am optimistic about, the progress of this one and then the next one. We saw some of that in action this year when the Red Stars played at Wrigley.
Right.
There were conditions in the CBA about, hey, we're not playing in a non-soccer stadium. We're not doing this anymore.
Right.
We have grown out of that, and so they had to do a lot to get that approved. And I hope we keep seeing that standard being pushed up.
Right.
And folks having their own training sessions. I'm curious to see how that goes with the Boston Stadium availability situation and conversations. And yeah,
Speaking of the Boston Stadium, there was
Mhm.
an uproar
There was.
over Boston. Tell us a little bit about that. This is obviously going
So
a little bit of a tangent, but for casuals
yeah.
like myself, fill that in a little.
Yeah. So Boston new expansion team
Hmm.
name question mark pending, might be changing, might not be, we don't know. It is
I
the
hope they
Boston
change
soccer
it.
team. We all really want them to, and they seem like they're taking the feedback to heart, and I appreciate that. Keep going with that,
Wasn't
guys.
it? Wasn't it? If I'm remembering correctly, wasn't it so horrible of a launch that all the way down to the launch video, people were like, "What is this?"
Yeah, 100%. We thought the night before they said they were launching the site and everything, we're like, this is a joke, right? We're not, this isn't real. We were trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, and then it was terrible. It was too manyballs.com, I believe, was the website, and Boss Nation is the proposed team name initially, and it was just, it felt like they didn't talk to anyone. Didn't talk to
No.
a single person who has watched the league for more than a month. Um, and it was really disappointing. It was just really disappointing. So I'm hoping they will, take a step back, do some
Yeah, and I
listening and
remember.
learning.
Yeah, and I know that like it was pretty quickly after that they started walking back some of the marketing,
I
just
think almost
because
same day.
I think you're right. Because I remember, I think it was next day that people were like, "Oh, that's gone." Like, nope, they took this down. Like, it's wiped from all of their channels.
Yeah.
This, that, and the other, and it's just like, wow, you guys flubbed that one, didn't you?
You sure did. And Louisville flubbed theirs at first a little bit too, and listened to feedback, came back, and now has some of the best kits in the league. So there's hope. I have hope.
Right, right. So, and
Anyway, this
also, wasn't part of the CBA that just happened also had to do with like some of the free agency stuff and rookies
it
and stuff
did.
like that. So
Yes. The draft is now gone. So like the out of college, we're going into the draft.
that's
Like
right.
you get, you graduate college, you go and they say, "Hey, you get to go live in Louisville or you get to go live in Los Angeles." That part's gone, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
That's very uh different to most American sports, but it
right.
is much more aligned with other soccer clubs. Like in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
for soccer, if a player wants to move or if a team wants to trade a player to another club, they have to make an agreement with the player and with the club they're coming from. It is a like two-pronged situation of everyone needs to be in agreement here. And
Right.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It feels nicer and less like we're saying, "Hey, pick up your whole life and go move to another city."
To somewhere you probably don't want to be.
Yeah. Which like I mean, even in baseball you see folks who, get traded in the middle of a game, which is
Right.
insane.
Yeah. It's
So
even happened a couple times in the NBA.
yeah, which is just like, what are we doing? But okay. I always feel bad for their families. I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys just pack up and go again.
Yeah. Just brand new house, brand new place, brand new everything. I couldn't do
Um,
it, but more power
no.
to them who can.
Right, right. I couldn't do it.
But
The Boston Stadium. Sorry, I want to make sure I cover it. So they are sharing a stadium, with, I think, the Boston public school system on some level, or there are like
oh dear
12
God.
schools that have access to scheduling or priority scheduling ahead of uh the NWSL. They also have like a
Ahead of a
curfew for the
professional
stadium.
sports team.
Yeah, this is what happens when you share public resources,
Oh
and
dear.
not with, or don't have your own stadiums, which
Right.
is stadiums are tough anyway. That's a
And
whole other
this is also
conversation.
why it's important to kind of not put the cart before the horse when it comes to incepting a new sports team, franchise, club, whatever the case may be, is because I mean, like, for example, there's still WNBA teams that have been franchises for decades and they still don't even have their own training facilities. It's like,
Right?
why are we dreaming up a new sports team and not giving them a place to practice, a place to be, a place to have their locker rooms, etc., etc., etc.?
Yeah, it feels like, whatever that foundational bar for you get a franchise, you should have to prove certain things. And
Yes.
if you can't, you don't get one. But I
Mm,
don't think we're doing that yet. I don't
doesn't seem like it.
know.
Doesn't
No,
seem
and
like.
like I will bend that more for basketball because I need more WNBA teams to exist
Yeah.
than four is what it feels like most of the time.
Yes.
But soccer, I feel like we can level off a little bit.
Hmm.
We had some growth. Now let's
Yeah.
take a break, make sure everyone's good, and maybe we
Yeah.
can grow again.
Yes. I totally agree with that because when you're growing exponentially, then the people that are already there are just kind of forgotten about. And so if you don't have what you need, then you see potentially these brand new teams getting these brand new facilities, everything brand new, and you don't even have a place to practice.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. And then if you're, subject to a draft and you get taken to, just to bring it full circle, to a team that doesn't have its own training facility, mm,
Yeah.
it's not going to be fun.
No, it should definitely be equal across the board. Man, there's so much left to do. There's so much left to do. Um, so speaking a little bit more on the moral setback side, FIFA shattered the earth recently. Um, and for me, I'm a casual fan, as I said multiple times. This was something that even I knew when I saw this news was like, oh my God, what are they doing? So obviously, I'm talking about when FIFA announced that former U.S. women's national team head coach Jill Ellis is their new chief football officer. What's your take on that?
Well, I hate it. I feel like yeah, I was gonna say I'm wrote notes on this because I was like, don't say anything. You're gonna regret. Um, but it's failing up. Is the short answer for me, but also, FIFA has never been the bastion of ethics and morals that we would love
Ever.
a global head of a sport to be. They're just not it. I mean, I remember I forget which head of FIFA it was. It wasn't that long ago.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but they had a guy in charge who thought the women played with a different size ball, who thought that like talked about them like wearing shorter shorts and like, oh, we could change it to do it. And it's just like, dude, you don't even know first of all how it works. Second of all, these are your this is the most basic and offensive stuff ever.
And highly
So,
misogynistic, to say the least.
oh god, yeah. So I suppose there's a small piece of having a woman as head of football, chief football officer is like, okay, at least she knows how the sport works. But guess what? There's a lot of other folks who do as well, and maybe we should have hired one of them.
That happen to also
Um,
be women.
yeah, exactly. Like it could. I've There's a
That
list
don't
of
have a
names we can
history
put
of
together.
abusive leadership tendencies,
Toxic workplace
possibly.
creation. I
And
think
it's
there's
crazy to me what stuck out is that all of these things that she had been alleged of are so recent.
so recent. I mean,
Like,
San Diego hasn't been around that long.
yeah, so recent. And so, how do you? It's such a slap in the face to the fans to just
It's
be like, yeah, so yeah, you guys remember that problematic person you put all this work into, pointing out at this other place? Yeah, they work for us now.
Yeah, it's like actually we're gonna make her more powerful than
Yeah,
important. That's how that
yeah.
goes. It's like, wait, no, that's the opposite of what we all want. When
We
we
didn't
said
want
get
that.
her out of San Diego, that's not what we meant.
We didn't
We
mean
didn't
put her somewhere else.
Yeah, and in charge of more things. That wasn't
No.
the goal. Yeah, I think there is right now going to be an interesting clash in the uh let's say progressiveness of women's sports
Hmm.
and capitalism. Uh Not to get overly like I will get overly political, but like not to get too far into the
Do it.
backside of things to say, but we have a young generation,
Right.
a who know their worth, who
Hmm.
aren't afraid to say it, who know how to use media, coming up against the old guard of sports, who don't know enough about their youth, to be honest, or how they function. They also don't know how to like, convert something to a PDF. It's fine. Um, but then they also are focused on more money. That's their
Right.
only focus.
Right.
And that means more games, that means more tournaments, that means more injuries. And that's
Hmm.
the part that I'm always most worried about.
Right.
We see it in the men's game right
Because
now,
that is always at the
uh,
expense of the player.
every time.
Every time.
Um, and they treat players as if they are not the most valuable piece of their product, for
Right.
lack of a better term, when they are, especially for women's sports. We are here for the players. We are
Yep.
not here for teams. We are not here for like league allegiances. Like we'll fight over it because it's fun to dunk on like the
And because we
English
live
league
in
and
different
stuff.
areas, therefore we
Ex-
have different loyalties, you know what I mean?
exactly.
But what
Like
it
we're gonna
boils
pick
down
something.
to is we care about the players that are on our team, no matter who they are.
Yeah, I care about players who are on other like, I don't wanna
Exactly.
see anyone get injured because
Nope.
they've been playing too much. I don't wanna
Nope.
see anyone go through any of that, and then they also have less medical support. They
Right.
have, and that's just American healthcare, actually part
Yep.
of global healthcare. Um,
Unfortunately.
so we put it all together, and it's like, "Oh, that's a cool garbage fire to put a toxic person in charge of,"
Yeah.
and I don't think it's gonna get better under her.
No. No.
And I think it'll be a minute until that stuff does get better. I'm hoping we can keep a line somewhere between those pieces, and it's the like players associations and the CBAs that keep those lines in place and protect players, but we're going to have to keep those strong at this point, I think, going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. Well said. I think it's definitely one of those things that everybody pretty much has the same opinions across the board, especially if you're truly, truly a fan of women's soccer. And like you said, of the players themselves, you can't look at that decision and that hiring placement and think, oh, well, maybe something positive can come of this. No, no,
No.
needs to move on.
There's so many other humans you could put in that role. That's how I think anytime anyone like that is promoted or,
Right.
given a position of power, I'm like, there are 1,000 other people who would kill for that job and
Right.
have never been had any allegations of these sorts against them.
And I
Maybe
feel
try
like
one of them.
in men and women's soccer, I feel like we see that a lot where
We do.
problematic people are constantly given second chances, third chances, fourth chances, promoted to positions of higher power when they shouldn't be in the ones they're already in. All of that. And it's just like, why is this always such a thing in soccer?
I really don't know, and it is a thing that keeps me up at night. I'm like, if we
Yeah.
could just include in like the quality of a player, they're like being a human and having empathy or like, being not abusive or,
They're not
having
treating our players like cattle.
yeah. If you treat other humans like humans, cool. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stay around. That
Yeah.
should be part of a player's quality to me. And when it's not, when we draw a line between, the artist and the or their art and the person, I roll my eyes at it a lot because I'm like, we can't do that. It's part of the whole picture.
And character is still character, no matter what hat you're wearing.
Exactly. Right? And do you want that person then influencing your locker room and your new guys coming in or your young players coming up, your fans? Do you want that person representing your club, your community, your city, whatever?
No, because that's when we see the fans shouting harmful, horrible things at the
Horrific
players.
things because
Yeah.
it's been okayed.
Hmm.
It's said like, hey, this isn't a bar we have to hold, and it's
No consequence whatsoever at
yeah,
all.
and
It's just terrible.
yeah. So yeah, the better people, please,
Yeah.
in 2025. Just
Yeah.
better people.
I agree.
Great.
I
It's
fully
my
agree
theme.
with that. And I think any women's soccer fan, casual or diehard or anywhere in between, would agree with that. Because if
I
you
hope
know,
so.
even the slightest thing about women's soccer, like I said, as soon as I saw the name, was like, wait, no, what? What are we doing?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can't do this. No.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so to end it on a little bit more of a positive note,
Love it.
we talked about it a little bit, but free agency going on. Is there any extensions? And you can have your, as we say on WNBA Twitter, you can have your fan goggles on or off for this one. Are there any extensions or trades that have made you raise your eyebrows?
That's interesting. Definitely have. I have a hard time splitting my brain between the two.
Between the fan goggles and no fan goggles?
Yeah. I think it's like more like a monocle. It's one
Yeah.
eye rather than the other. I'm trying to think. Uh, I am curious to see what happens with Marta. I think is
Mhm.
a very fun question. Just I wouldn't begrudge it either way. She did her thing, and now go be free, Marta. Do
Yeah.
whatever you want. Um, I think Naomi Girma's one I'm really looking out for to see, is she gonna go abroad? Is she
Mhm.
not? What's gonna happen there? I kind of would love that for her. I always get excited when young players go play somewhere entirely different, learn a different football and culture. It's just different, and it's
Yeah.
not better or worse, but they just get to increase their repertoire, and I think that's
And
gonna
that's
help.
once in a lifetime for the player to
Right?
go over and
And
have that experience. And obviously, we know Europeans love their soccer. So it's just a completely different world over there.
it's yeah, you can't trade it for anything. I don't think that life experience, and I think you become a better player by,
Agreed.
differentiating your experience. So why not?
Yeah.
Although can she get better? I don't know. We'll find out. I think the other one was Portillo to
Mhm.
Gotham is a cool signing for
Yes.
them.
I was hoping you would mention that one.
Uh, I low key during the Olympics got really excited because I thought her name was spelled with two L's, and I was like, we need to bring her to Chicago so she can be a Portillo's affiliate or
No, it's a ILHO,
spokesperson.
isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because it's Brazilian. But I'd only heard it on the broadcast so far before I
Right.
started like rapidly googling, and I was like, oh, I'm disappointed. But we
Dang
could still
it.
make it work. We could
Mhm.
make it work. But Gotham is a good start. I am curious to see what happens with Gotham. They just have such a strong roster,
Right.
but also now, some folks are heading out. There are a lot of folks injured. I'm curious to
Mhm.
see as folks heal up, as those changes happen, what are they going to bring in? How much should we panic? I don't think much yet, but I do think it's worth keeping an eye on for sure.
And you mean how much should we panic as a fan of another team?
Yeah. I'm always worried about everyone's welfare.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, because I don't want anyone to be like terrible. I
Right.
want it's very bring it on of like I don't want you to lose because you couldn't afford to go to the tournament or because we
Totally.
didn't have the roster. I want us to like you to lose because we all played our best and
Yeah,
all of us won.
it's the Torrance line. To be the
Yes.
best, you have to compete against the best.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. And so like I don't want anyone to just be bad. Like
Right.
we kind of saw that in Houston last year if they were just floundering and kind of stuck in limbo. And
True.
so I'm like, guys, go. I hope things get better. Uh I don't know. It just
Yeah, because I mean, you're a fan. You want it to be competitive. You want the product to
always.
be red hot.
Yes.
So I totally agree with that. That's kind of how I look at the WNBA. I'm like, let's spread some of these good players out. Like these four on the aces, y'all need to go somewhere else.
Right? Break that up.
You know?
Break that up. Why who let them do that?
Yeah.
Uh
Well, 2 years of having the number one pick in the draft let them do that.
yeah,
Just like what we
exactly.
saw in Indiana last year and the year.
Oh gosh.
But I agree
Uh
with you. It's just so much more exciting across the league, especially in soccer, when
yeah.
everyone is competitive because you get to the end of the season in tournament time and it's just like, who's going to fall today?
It could be anyone, and
Hmm.
that's what makes it fun is the parity in the league is what I think makes it
Absolutely.
still the best league we've got. That is a hotly contested conversation, but I do think having, knowing that the number 10 team can beat the number 2 team on any given day,
Hmm.
that's that makes it exciting. That makes you
Yeah.
wanna tune in every time. So
Yeah. That, as they say, puts butts in seats.
exactly, exactly, and that's we need people to go to games.
Well, as we get ready to let you go, thank you so much for joining today. We
Of course.
appreciate you. Tell us
Thank
where we can find you, where we can find Gal Pal Sports, Leslie, the whole fam.
Yeah, the whole fam. You can find us on at Galpal Sports on everything.
Hmm.
I'm EMC Anderson on most things as well, but
Hmm.
for photos and stuff, especially on Instagram and Blue Sky. I almost said Twitter. It's not there anymore. We're not doing it. Uh, but yeah, we're around. Play Immaculate Grid, and if you do play it, let me know. Let
Yes.
me know if you have fun with it. Because I make those too, so that's fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, like I said, thank you so much for coming on today, and hopefully we'll be able to connect again sometime during the soccer season. Maybe get your in-season thoughts on what's going on.
Absolutely, and I'll bring Leslie too. We'll make her
Awesome. Yeah,
and
please
the
do.
dogs. Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
and the
Tell
whole
her,
family.
tell her I said hi and thanks for letting me borrow you today.
We'll do.
All right. This has been another episode of Everyone Watches Sports. That is not a statistic, it's a movement. Thanks for tuning in, y'all.